You're listening to Soundside. I'm Libby Denkman. Every Monday on Soundside, we catch you up on the top stories that are fascinating right now and what they say about the Pacific Northwest. We call it Front Page. And joining me today to take on the top stories of the day is KUOW Politics editor Kat Smith. Welcome, Kat. Is Kat Catherine? Which do you prefer?
I go by both, but for the air, I do Kat because it's easier to pronounce.
Catherine, Kat, thank you so much for being here. Today is just one of those days where it feels like the news is unrelentingly sad.
For real.
And really difficult to process. We are still waiting to know more about the Bondi Beach shooting in Australia that killed 15 people. That was an attack targeting Jewish people who were gathered to celebrate the first night of Hanukkah. We also learned this morning that the director Rob Reiner, famous for films like When Harry Met Sally and This Is Spinal Tap, was killed in his home along with his wife, Michelle. And now the son, Nick Reiner, has been booked on suspicion of homicide, according to Los Angeles police. These are all things that weigh heavily on our community. Now, we are going to focus more close to home and the flooding issues that are affecting many communities around Western Washington. Mm-hmm. But, Kat, all of this stuff is kind of part and parcel of things that people in our neighbors and everybody is thinking about, and it weighs on them.
Right. And I think, at a time where we're still in the middle of this extreme weather event here in Washington and the rest of the news nationally and globally feels so heavy, this is just, it's just not a great feeling. And there are a lot of people in our state right now who are displaced from their homes or trying to assess damage to their most treasured possessions, and everything else outside of their immediate, field of vision is also horrible. I think that's a lot. It's a lot for people to deal with right now.
Yeah, one foot in front of the other, and taking one story at a time. Right now, we are looking at the second atmospheric river bringing heavy rains to Western Washington. Just as the waters had receded, we had that just break in the clouds and the rain on Saturday. We had sunshine, and people were sort of assessing how that first round of flooding was affecting them. Now there's a storm system that's expected to last through tonight, but rain and strong winds are going to stick around through Wednesday, according to the National Weather Service. As of yesterday, more than 26,000 residents across Washington state still under an evacuation order. Already this morning, more than a half of an inch of rain has been falling. Kat, what are you watching as this all unfolds? And again, so many places around Western Washington are feeling the effects or watching those waters rise again.
Right. I think one of the things we're going to have to keep an eye on are for fresh evacuation orders. I think right now I'm thinking about the Green River near Seattle, and I'm thinking also about, during that brief reprieve that we had over the weekend, floodwaters started receding, and some people were able to go back to their homes. Some can't if your home is too damaged. Like, it's just not safe to go in there because there's, risk of natural gas line damage or collapse. But some people are picking through the rubble of their lives while we had this reprieve in the weather. And I think what we're going to start looking at is the long, slow, painful process of people realizing how bad is the damage, state officials starting to look around and assess what's the infrastructure damage, what kind of assistance do we need federally. And there was an image that's really stuck with me from last week. Our reporter, Scott Greenstone, was up in Burlington, up in Skagit County, and he filed this story to me on Friday night. And he was talking to this family. They were standing near their flooded out home on the street, and they weren't able to get close, but a neighbor waded into the waters and peeked in their windows, and they said they saw their couch cushions floating, their couches were floating, and their bananas were floating past the window.
Wow.
So they came back, somebody waded out of the waters and brought that story secondhand to this couple. Their names are Jocelyn and Kenneth Alm. And so they're telling this to our reporter, to Scott, and you can kind of hear them giggling about it, the absurdity of seeing bananas, fruit floating through their home through the window, and that they didn't even get to see that visual themselves. Somebody brought that back to them. And you can hear Kenneth in the background kind of laughing and giggling about the absurdity of these bananas floating. And they're thinking, I think Jocelyn said, if the bananas are floating, we probably lost everything. They were hoping they had an album of photos, pictures that they put up high in a back room, but at that point they hadn't even gone in to assess yet. Mm-hmm. By now, maybe
because the bananas were probably on a counter, right?
Right.
So if the water got that high,
if the bananas are floating, everything's probably gone. So that to me, I keep thinking about that when like we haven't really seen a lot of numbers like monetary damage. It's unclear the scope of this disaster, and there's more rain on the way. And I think this thing is so fresh, right? Like people who've lost everything haven't had time to even process that. And officials haven't even had time to calculate the damage. And, you know, we got assurances from the federal government last week that we were going to get some federal help. But there's no guarantee. There's no like money guarantee. There's no dollar signs that have been put on paper anywhere. And, you know, at first that kind of worried me. The governor said in a press conference on, I think it was Friday, he said, you know, there's no guarantee that we're going to get money from the federal government. There's no dollar amounts that have been discussed. And at first I thought that was kind of concerning because, you know, we got snubbed from federal help after the bomb cyclone
after
last
that wind
year.
event, yeah.
But the more I think about it, I think part of that is because we just don't know how much money it's going to cost to rebuild. I think one of the only estimates I've seen so far came from Snohomish County's emergency management director, Lucia Schmidt. And they told the Washington State Standard that they were looking at they were guessing infrastructure damage to be in the millions of dollars. That's just one county, and that's a very vague statement. So I think we have a long time to go before I feel like we're just at the tip of the iceberg here in making these assessments. And that's just infrastructure. I'm also thinking about, you know, like roads and bridges, yes. But like Leavenworth had to cancel holiday events over the weekend. And that's a city.
Yeah, the tourism dollars
exactly.
Of that. Yeah, you
that's
can't
huge.
Estimate how much. And one weekend is one thing, but I don't know if you saw Highway 2. There's a huge chunk taken out of Highway 2. I mean, it is going to take a lot to recover to get the roads passable to the degree that like a tourist, you know, average tourist is going to feel comfortable getting through there. You know, I do want to mention before we turn the page here, the Skagit River is rising again. It is forecast to crest above major flood stage in Concrete tomorrow morning early and then reach the same levels downstream in Mount Vernon Tuesday evening. And you were talking, Kat, about the fact that flood wall in downtown Mount Vernon likely saved a lot of property damage because it did hold in the last crest. And now we're watching to see again as the waters rise, will it hold again? Mm-hmm. But after the crest, people were going down to like lay hands on the flood wall to thank it.
Our reporter Casey Martin was in Mount Vernon overnight, Thursday night, Friday morning to see if that flood wall would hold, and it did. And in the morning, people were coming to the flood wall to like thank it for holding overnight, which I thought was a really powerful image that's sticking with me. And like just how resilient some of that infrastructure has been when these rivers are, you know, cresting at historic levels.
KUOW.org for all the latest flood coverage, and we will be continuing to watch as, again, the rain is falling and this second atmospheric river creates more risk of flooding across our region. You can also find the latest travel maps on the Washington State Department of Transportation's website. I highly recommend that for folks who want to see if their route to work or home is open. Turning the page.
Be our guest. Be our guest. Put our
Okay, we're going to lighten it up just a little bit here, Kat, because you saw a story, and it has to do with how expensive it is to go out to eat these days.
Yeah.
But not so expensive for some lucky diners at probably the fanciest restaurant in Seattle last week.
Yeah.
What happened here?
Yeah, so we are talking about the restaurant Canlis. And what happened last week is I talked to the restaurant to confirm this. What happened last week was the restaurant had a promotional event or a celebratory event for their 75th anniversary. And they brought menu prices down to like rock bottom levels. We're talking about black cod entree for $3.50.
What?
Pork loin for $4.
Oh my god!
A souffle for $1.25. And
$1.25?
Yeah. So I saw this posted on Reddit. I saw the menu posted on Reddit. I saw some people commenting like, yes, I was in there. It just happened to be this celebratory, super rock bottom price menu. The cocktails apparently were the same price. I did talk to the restaurant and confirm they did not provide me with the cocktail menu. I just wanted to look at it to see how cheap it was to like eat my heart out. But this, you know, a place like Canlis is out of reach for a lot of people in Seattle. And right now, when it costs so much to go out to restaurants, this isn't really a place that most people are ever going to think that they would ever want to go. just seeing these, if you look at this menu, there's a photo of the promotional menu up on Reddit where you can look at the prices, and it's just shocking. It's so cheap.
I have never
so cheap.
felt like Canlis was in my budget, and so this is fun. This is for people who had already gotten the reservations. They sat down, they opened their menus,
and surprise,
it's a couple dollars basically to order anything on the menu.
Yeah.
This is coming at a time, Kat, when restaurant prices are higher than ever.
Yep.
We have data that shows that for chain restaurants in particular in Washington state, we have the highest across the state average prices for chain restaurants to eat out at. In Seattle itself, at the city level, we are second only to San Francisco, the Bay Area, for chain restaurant prices.
Holy smokes.
And this is one of those stories. I think, inflation has cooled in a lot of ways, and prices for, average goods, they're still higher than they were before, but the rate of increase has cooled off. But it does feel like for groceries and for eating out, I have sticker shock every time I look at that bill.
Same.
The New York Times reports that the price of beef has soared. So USDA boneless steak, that is 20% higher in the past year. It's an average of $14-13 a pound. I mean, I used to think that doing like a pot roast in a slow cooker was a cheap way to feed a lot of people. That is no longer the case.
Yeah.
That's for sure.
Yeah.
Good for Canlis. Do you think that this has anything to do with the viciously bad review that the Seattle Times gave Canlis in the last month or so?
I want to think that because that would be like very good to buy themselves some very good press. However, they didn't advertise. They don't appear to have advertised this menu dramatic price reduction. They just did it as a fun thing. So people, I saw on Reddit, people who just wandered in for their reservation were completely shocked. So this wasn't like a draw. And I think what you're talking about is like sticker shock at restaurants causes people to belt tighten.
Right.
I mean, just anecdotally, I'm not going out to eat as much, and I'm not a good cook. So I'm just kind of suffering through my own trash at home.
Kat, you can come over and eat at my place.
Can you please cook for me? It's
I'm
rough.
an okay cook.
Okay.
Yeah.
So belt tightening is happening at restaurants. And you tend to see that hit like your Pizza Huts, your Sweet Greens. Those kind of places tend to fall off a cliff.
Because those are
first.
sort of the impulse buy type
Right.
places.
Places like Canlis. I was reading a report in Restaurant Dive, trade industry magazine, looking at this.
Oh, sure. Who doesn't check a Restaurant Dive every day?
I love a trade mag. I got my start in journalism at a tech trade mag, so I have a special place in my heart for trade mags.
They do important work.
They really do. So Restaurant Dive said that places, the highfalutin places like Canlis, they don't tend to fall off a cliff the way like your Sweet Greens and your Pizza Huts will, because those are always going to be split. Well, I mean, first, like rich people they always have that cushion.
Rich people still be rich.
They still be eating like rich.
Yeah.
So, but for other people who aren't as wealthy, Canlis is a splurge. You plan on it being a splurge. It's not like an impulse thing on a Tuesday. Hey,
Yeah.
do you feel like going out tonight? You're probably not going to, the average consumer is probably not going to go to Canlis. It's something that you plan out and you expect to drop coin there. And so people continue to do that
Makes
at those
sense.
places. Yeah, so weirdly, when there's belt tightening and the restaurant industry starts to feel a squeeze, the super high-end places don't tend to feel that. And they don't need to create gimmicks or like specials to try and draw people in. So I think it's just a coincidence that this is happening. Maybe. It might just be a coincidence that this is happening.
Fun deal at Canlis. It also does sound like they need to turn around their latest iteration of their menu. If Bethany Jean Clement at the Seattle Times has anything to say about it, which, she's been around the block and covering restaurants here for a long time. Really quick, I want to get to our last story on the front page.
3rd down and 4. Rivers, and he's got a man, touchdown! That's Josh Downs, and that's Phillip Rivers with a touchdown pass.
Grandfather Phillip Rivers throwing a touchdown pass against the Seahawks yesterday.
Grandfather.
The Seahawks held on. They had a last-minute drive for a field goal that pushed the Hawks ahead of the Colts 18-16 yesterday. But again, the real win might be for grandpas everywhere, because at 44, Rivers retired 5 years ago. He had not played professionally in, again, 5 years. The Colts had so many injuries at quarterback that he came out of retirement, suited up, a little bit of a paunch, but hey, he was out there. He was looking a little creaky, but dang, you know who threw a touchdown pass yesterday? Phillip Rivers, 44 years old. You know who didn't? 28-year-old Sam Darnold. A lot of questions for the Seahawks offense and whether we really can go all the way, as some prognosticators have been, maybe optimistically expecting of this team. But man, just really quick, Tom Brady was 45 when he retired, so this is not a record. Warren Moon was also 44 when he officially retired, but dang, Grandpa. For people in their 40s everywhere, I am so proud. Salute you, Phillip Rivers. I'm glad we beat you, but still, great job, Grandpa.
It's pretty cool.
That was Front Page for today, December 15th. Kat Smith, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you very much, Libby.
Thanks for listening to Soundside. Don't forget you can listen live on KUOW 94.9 Seattle at noon and 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, or anytime right here online at KUOW.org, or of course on your favorite podcast app.